There are many advantages and disadvantages to both asexual and sexual reproduction. So, when is each type used? In asexual reproduction, only one parent is needed. This is time and energy efficient as there is no need to find a mate or spread gametes, which will waste energy and time. It is also often faster than sexual reproduction. It rapidly produces large numbers of identical offspring. Producing large numbers of identical offspring is an advantage in favorable conditions, which means if the organism is living in favorable conditions. But if the environment changes, if the environment is not constantly stable, this becomes a disadvantage. And what do we mean by this? If the organism is reproducing asexually and it's producing identical copies of it, that means this organism will produce offspring that are adapted to the same environment of the parent because they are all identical. And the parent, of course, has to be adapted to its environment. So if the environment is stable, then no changes in genetic makeup or in behavior are needed from the offspring. So it's probably favorable to do asexual reproduction for its advantages. However, if the parent lives in an environment that is not stable, that changes, that is variable, for example, if the parent lives in an area that suffers from droughts every 10 years or so, then the offspring will be exactly identical to the parent and will have the same adaptations as the parent. So if by the time the offspring comes to life, the parent's environment changes, the offspring will not be adapted to the new environment. So the offspring will die. When we are talking about mitosis and asexual reproduction, if one organism cannot survive, then none can. Asexual reproduction can be sped up by humans to produce large numbers of clones, for example, to increase food production. In sexual reproduction, two parents or at least two gametes are needed because some organisms have both gametes, the male and the female gametes, so they can have sexual reproduction within one parent. So to be more accurate, we say two gametes are needed instead of two parents. Sexual reproduction takes time and energy to either find a mate or to produce the sex cells, to spread the gametes. It is often slower than asexual reproduction. A great advantage, however, of sexual reproduction is that it produces variation in offspring. So here, if the environment changes between generations, this variation will give a chance for the offspring to survive because these offspring are different from the parents, so they will have different adaptations than the parents and can adapt to different environments. So if the environment changes from hot to cold, for example, then the offspring that will have characteristics that make them adapt to the cold, these ones will survive. The other ones that did not get these adaptations will die, but at least some offspring will survive and not the entire population dies. This is what we call natural selection. Natural selection can be sped up by humans in selective breeding. For example, if a farmer has a certain crop and they find that a few plants of these crops are better at producing vegetation than others, then they will selectively start to breed these few plants because this variation allows some plants to be better than others. So selectively, the ones that are the best are chosen and bred. This is what we call selective breeding. So we saw the differences between sexual and asexual reproduction, and now we know in which conditions and situations it is best to have either types of reproduction.